There we go. So today, as soon as Graham is able to log in, I'm sure he can do a welcome. It's much nicer than mine. We'll have Dan Castle go over the County Bicentennial, some notice about that, and the offerings from ASI. Then we'll go into the 2021 results basically, and an overview of the 2022 changes and overall needs, and then I'll do a live demo of level 2. And then we'll go over some questions that you may have. Feel free to put the questions in the chat as we go along. I will be monitoring that, and I'll try to get to them in a timely fashion. But if not, we'll review it all at the end. All right, Dan.
All right. Well, thanks, Mary Ellie. I appreciate that. You know, technology is great when it works, and sometimes when it doesn't work real well, you have to adjust on the fly. So I think that's probably not anything new to folks in the arts and cultural world. So we'll definitely get started, and glad it's being recorded, and we'll certainly be available for any assistance that folks need after tonight. So I just want to begin by saying, you know, on behalf of the County Executive Mark Polenkars, I want to thank you not only for your attention tonight, but also what your organizations do throughout the entire year to make, you know, to improve quality of life in Erie County. And, you know, who would have thought when we got together a year ago at the Central Library that we would be having the year that we did. And a lot of ways to explain that, but this past year. But the fact is, you know, you guys had, as bad as the county had it, you guys were hit in more significant ways, and it's testament to the commitment of the county executive, as well as the legislature chair, April Baskins, to continue funding in 2020, honoring commitments in 2021, and still looking forward to 2022. So with that, we can certainly get started with the events. I think before we get into the crux of the discussions tonight and going through the application process and some of the changes reflecting on COVID, I just wanted to mention that this year, 2021, is Erie County's Bicentennial, and planning was underway when COVID diverted a lot of us to other priorities. But what we're looking for this year is opportunities to partner with arts and cultural organizations and other nonprofits throughout the county this entire year, remembering our history, celebrating the past, or celebrating the present rather, and looking to the future. And so any thoughts that you guys have for potential partnering on events between your organization and the county that reflect on the bicentennial theme, a person, event, other things of historic importance, we're all ears, and we're looking for opportunities to partner with you guys. So certainly you can send ideas to Mary Ellie or I, and on the slide here is a note from the overall lead, Jason Hurley at the County Executive Office. So if you know Jason, feel free to reach out to him directly, and we're glad to look forward to making this year as good as possible. Next slide, please. I guess, okay, so before we get started, I just want to mention that our partnership with the Arts Services, ASI, and they are on our team really to help work with you folks on completing your applications, answering any questions in terms of programming and how to fill out the applications. They're a resource to you, no cost. So I encourage you to take advantage of them, but also reach out to Mary Ellie, certainly if you have any further questions. So I think with that, I see Graham is back on, which is a good thing. Graham,
yes, I joined. Finally, I was able to join.
I'll turn it over to you in your tap shoes.
All right, great. Thank you very much, and I do apologize for joining late. Just some technical difficulties on my end, so I do apologize for that. So thank you very much for joining us. My name is Graham Smith. I am the chair of Erie County Arts and Cultural Advisory Board. This is the applicant briefing for the level 2 applications, and there's a little bit some changes this year, so thank you very much for joining. So we'll just get right into it. So in 2021, the last funding year, which again always seems sort of strange because we're in 2021 now, and we're going into the last year. These are the largest 5 grants, and again, 110 organizations, both arts and cultural, received $6.95 million in funding in this last year, and that's fairly similar to funding from the prior year. And so again, given everything that's gone in the last year, I think it's pretty amazing, frankly, that the county was able to maintain that level of funding. But again, I think a lot of people think the sort of, there are larger grants. And again, these are the larger 5, but the vast majority of them are certainly not that large. The smallest grants are in the $1,000 range. Obviously, the average ones are at $63,000, but the median being only $9,200 and the mode $7,500. So again, I think there's a lot of splash in sort of the larger ones, but again, the vast majority of the grants that are going out are certainly on the smaller side. Marielle, if we can move on to the next one. So just as sort of an explanation of sort of how the funding sort of happens. Again, we're typically releasing the application, which was released on Monday at the end or sometime in February, typically. This year was just slightly later in early March, and that's because there are some exciting new things that are happening in this year's funding cycle. So apologize for the delay, but it will be good things, I think. Again, the applicant briefing is scheduled right after the release, is what we're having right now. And contracts for the current year, so the 2021 are going out or mailed out. And again, this year it's an online application, so you'll be required to complete an online account. It's a single account for one organization, so even if you have multiple people completing it, it is just the one account for each one. And then, of course, the staff at DEP and the board itself actually reviews the applications themselves. Once we get them back, we do sort of a cursory look. If there's any questions that we might have, we filter those through DEP, and then they ask those questions of you. Again, some of that is it's less about missing items, more about something maybe we don't understand in, again, sort of our initial review of it. And then typically as a board, sometimes we meet on an individual basis, depending upon the group, certainly depending upon if we have new board members as well, to discuss any concerns that we have, or really something that we perhaps don't understand that's in an application that we may have received, and sort of bounce things off of others in our group. And then we sort of get down to the sort of meat and potatoes of doing the actual review. And again, it takes a number of hours to review all of that. So all of the work that you're putting into putting the applications together is not going without really a rigorous review on the part of the organization. It is not just, we're asking you for all this information, and we're not on our end really sort of taking a look at everything. We're really reviewing absolutely everything that you're submitting. And there's a certain percentage of the organizations the DEP gets as well. They tend to be on the smaller side. So it is not just the board, but it is DEP staff as well that are actually doing the reviews. After the reviews are done, we complete the review itself. We make recommendations, which goes back to the Department of Environment and Planning. They put their budget together, and then their budget request goes to the county executive office for the larger county budget. And then it gets in sort of the sausage making part of legislative budget proposals. And then by December of the year, a final budget is put out there, and funding is decided upon. The due dates this year for, even though we're starting again just slightly late in the beginning of March, the due date is the 5th of May for level 2 and 3 applications this year, which gives you just a little over 8 weeks to complete, which again, I think hopefully is enough time for everybody, given everything that's going on as well. The next slide, Marielle. Just to put a face to the board, again, it's very easy to say, oh, the Erie County Arts and Cultural Advisory Board and the staff at DEP who are involved. But I mean, there really are people behind all of this. And these are what they look like. These are available on the website as well. The only thing is there's a sort of camera shy, because at this point we have a pending replacement on the board, and so they're obviously not, we're not able to be photographed. But again, lots of time and effort on the part of the individuals. And again, some of them I know are actually logged in as well. Hopefully they are and didn't have difficulty. And I'd just like to thank them for their efforts sort of publicly, because again, it does take quite a bit of time to do all the reviews for what you're sending in. The next slide. If you've been in one of these before, you've certainly heard me say this, and certainly Catherine prior to me, that we do not review your programming content or evaluate the artwork that you're doing, whether that's dramatic or physical art. While we do have some people on the board who are involved in the arts, this is not what I would argue what the board was formed to do. It really is to do a check of the organizational aspects of what you're providing. So again, your governance, the management and planning for the organization, what sort of fiscal health is the organization in, what kind of community impact is the organization having, the alignment with the mission of the organization, with the actual programming that's being put on. So again, not evaluating the programming, but how it aligns with the mission itself. The recognition of the county, obviously, the county is providing taxpayer money, and so the county does like to see that their logo and they're recognized for the money that they're putting into organizations and applicants. And then again, somewhat new, but I mean, it's been sort of growing, but I think we've been asking this in different ways, really since I've been involved in the board, is the ability of the organization to be equitable, diverse, and inclusive in their work. So that's not just a matter of inclusive and diverse audiences, but it's about staffing, it's about volunteers, and that kind of thing. We have a very diverse county, and the audience, the staff, the volunteers, the board, all that should be reflective of how diverse our county is. And so that is becoming increasingly important. And again, it has been. It's just now we're actually sort of scoring on those things as well. Again, they're definitely independent reviews, and we like to for applicants to really see them that way. These are it's an opportunity to get unrestricted dollars for an organization, but it's also a good check. Do we have our governance documents? Is our planning where it should be? Are our finances where they should be? The goal of the reviews really is so that we can help an organization if they're having difficulty in a particular area, and sort of suggesting to have ways to improve. But we're also at the base of it is that you're not solely you're able to get money that is not just from the county, that you're able to get foundation dollars and perhaps corporate dollars as well. We provide feedback letters, obviously, at the end. So if you've received them in the past, you're aware of the letters themselves. We try to underscore both the strengths and any weaknesses of the application itself, and where improvements can be made, or where you're doing things that are really well and really are models for other organizations in our community. Moving on. The changes this year really are that the application now is available as a web form. Again, it's no more sort of fillable PDFs. There are if-then questions. So if you say no to something, you're not seeing questions that assume that you said yes previously. You can save it as a draft. I know that has been a huge issue in the past, where you're having to sort of create the application, then cut and paste things on the day that you're submitting it, with no ability to sort of save and go back and do those kinds of things. So that's now possible. You can navigate back and forth between your completed sections. Integrated uploads, and then a financial worksheet for each level. It's the same content as last year for each level, and it's submitted as a PDF. Access to that is at that URL that's listed on the slide. And again, just to reiterate, it is one account per applicant for each applicant. So if you have maybe 5 people who are working on the actual application, It's really just one login for each organization. So you'll need to share that and each person will need to be able to use it. The level of request this year is established as a percentage of the applicant's fiscal year 2019. Given everything that's gone on in the last year, we thought that 2019 actual budgets will be more reflective of the organization than 2020 potentially would be. However, we did hear yesterday in the level 1 application that there was an organization that was potentially doing better in 2020 than in 2019. But we are still looking for 2019 numbers again, just so that we have a level playing field for all organizations. If we can move on. The request structure for level 2 is from between 50,000, an ask of 50,000 to 150,000. That should not exceed 20% of the total budget of the organization. Now, again, if you're a large organization, you're asking for less, that's something else. But again, the threshold should be 20%. And if it's more than that, we're really sort of looking at that as a potential red flag. It shouldn't really be any more than 20% of the organization's overall budget. Eligibility has not changed. I'm sorry, Marielle, if we can move on to the next one. Eligibility has not changed. You still need to be located within Erie County and providing your services within Erie County. That does not mean that you can't be providing them. I know there are some more regional organizations that provide services outside of Erie County as well. But again, this funding is for Erie County in particular. So the majority of what you're doing should be in Erie County. You should be a 501c3 with tax exempt status for at least a year. And you must be able to submit us an IRS tax filing. So your 990EZ or 990 or 990N. And then if you're a cultural organization, I think it's somewhat easier to identify an arts organization. I think everybody sort of has a sense of what an arts organization is, but I think cultural is a little bit, I think people have their individual definitions, and I think a lot of those agree, but I think the county wanted to put out that your primary mission is one of those 3 that are on the slide. So you're operating on a countywide basis, you're recognized at a community level, you have activities that are cultural in nature and or collections that are distinctive and significant in quality. These are fairly broad, I would argue. And so again, I think they incorporate all of the applicants that we've had in the past. I think there's only been maybe once or twice in my tenure, both on the board and as chair, where we sort of had a question whether an organization was really eligible for the funding in this case. But again, as a previous applicant, clearly that would not be an issue. Moving on. So in terms of the levels, again, this is about level 2, so we'll talk about that, but you can see the level 1 and what level 3 requires. Level 2 and level 3 are somewhat similar, but there are some differences. So again, for level 2, it's a grant request more than 50, but not more than 150,000. The request does not exceed 20% of your budget. And then the documents that you'll be asked for are the level 2 application, obviously, the financial report that you submit to New York State and should be CPA reviewed, if not audited. Again, it only requires a review, but certainly higher level scrutiny is welcome as well. The level 2 financial worksheet is required. Again, your tax filing, the 990N, EZ, or just plain 990. A cash flow forecast, copies of your bylaws, your conflict of interest policy and whistleblower policy, along with the disclosure forms of your conflict of interest policy. So again, those collected from board members and dated, and those should be current. And again, just to, this came up sort of yesterday as well. Even though you may not change your bylaws or change your conflict of interest policy or your whistleblower policy, those should be reviewed on an annual basis, even if you're not changing them. And those should be dated more recently than when they were adopted, if they were adopted 2 or 3 years ago. Again, just so that it's clear to our board and the people who are doing the reviews themselves that these are policies that are being looked at by the board on a regular basis. And then obviously your strategic plan as well. The things that are applicable to all levels. The grants are for general operating support, which is fairly broad. They cannot be used for capital projects or improvements, nor can they be used to offset accounts receivable. And all of the funds that are received should be used for programming that exists or occurs within Erie County. That should seem fairly obvious. I think the other one that really I think we stress or try to stress every year is that these are not guaranteed funds. So we were lucky, I think, and again, it shows the value that the county executive and the legislature and the county feel the arts and cultural sector provides for the community, and that the funding was not impacted, although the pandemic certainly impacted revenues for the county themselves. So again, obviously every year there is no guarantee that there is money for arts and cultural organizations. But again, historically, that is something that has happened, but is not a guarantee. Moving on, the attachments. We sort of somewhat covered this in the previous one, but the annual financial report, again, should be reviewed by a CPA for your organization. Again, if not audited, again, the review is all that's required for level 2, but audited if you're able to. And these are things that you're submitting to the state anyway, so it should not be a stretch to provide. A financial worksheet, which can be filled out as a PDF form and uploaded when you upload your application itself. Your, again, tax form 990. A cash flow forecast, so that is not required of level 1. So 2 is sort of the threshold for that. And it should show starting cash, revenues, expenses by month. They may be summarized into general categories, and then the net per month and the net per year, as well as the final position, not including the starting cash. So I think as a reviewer, we've certainly seen cash flows forecasts that have looked all different sort of ways, where they're very detailed or they're very cursory. So I think spelling it out, and I think this sort of spells it out. And again, there's a template available on the eriecounty.gov/cultural URL, where you can actually get a template so that you're not sort of trying to figure it out yourself. You can just plug in the numbers. Your bylaws, obviously, and again, ideally, those are looked at on an annual basis, so a current date on those. Your conflict of interest and disclosure forms, as we said. There is a template available. I mean, the county is not, we're not legal counsel, certainly. So I would argue that some of the documents that you have people signing should certainly be looked at by an attorney or something like that. But there is a template that is available at the county's website. Again, your whistleblower policy, these are all required by New York State not-for-profit law. And again, if you don't have one of those currently, a template is available, but you'd still want that reviewed by an attorney. A strategic plan for the organization, where you're going. Ideally, that is current. If it's not current, then when it's going to be updated should certainly be a part of that as well. We're certainly looking for robust planning in every organization, no matter what level that's happening at. And then there is an additional ability to submit an attachment that talks about things that you think we as reviewers should know about your organization. There'll be an opportunity to talk about the pandemic in the actual application itself. But, and if you want to go into greater depth, you can certainly use it for that. But if there's really anything else that you want to let us as a board know, and the reviewer who gets your application to know about the organization and what happened in the last year, good, bad, whatever, you can certainly submit that additional attachment. It can be narrative, it can be images, it can be whatever you sort of think, again, will be important for the reviewer to know. And I know I sort of rushed through that, and I do apologize, and I apologize for getting on late. So we will have questions. We'll be able to answer questions at the end in the chat. And I know, please forgive, you would have said this at the beginning if I had not joined so late, but I know technology, given my lateness as well, doesn't always work that well. And I know that we've had a lot of robust question and answer at other applicant briefings we've done in the past. So I know that technology doesn't always necessarily lend itself to that. Certainly, if you have questions after the fact, you can reach out, whether that's to me or to Dan or to Marielle, through Marielle, and she can let us know that, and we can answer those for you as well. But without further ado, Marielle will now go through a live demo of the new application and how to complete it.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's being able to hear us all right. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I will be answering them as we go along. Let me switch my screen here. There we go. Okay, so first thing you do is go to erie.gov/cultural. If you haven't already, you would go and get an account. Let me log out real quick. There we go. You can just go to application, request an account, put in all your info, and submit. Once you get the email, I know it's a little weird. I think it's usually the last link that will take you to a page where you can actually go and reset your password here. If you are not sure or you didn't get the email, feel free to email me and I can give you your username, or you can put in your email address and see if it'll send it to you. Either way, if you're having issues, let me know. But you do want to check your spam folder. Let me see. That's the account I have that is the same as yours. So you go to application, and on here is all the information we kind of covered. It also has the financial worksheet links. Oops, let me do the level 2. And yesterday I actually forgot to open it. So I will do that now. So you can take a look. Oops, it's on my other screen. It's the same info we used to have in the application itself, but now it's in an Excel sheet. So you can make this look correct for you, put in all your info, save it as a PDF, which you can usually do. You can either save as if you have something fancy enough, or you can print to PDF by going to print. Microsoft Print to PDF. There's usually some sort of option to do so. If not, you can also just save it as an Excel and then change it to a PDF online on something like smallpdf.com or a website like that. You can just write Excel to PDF and it'll give you some conversion options. There are other resources on the resource page. The financial worksheets are here again. Here are the templates that Graham mentioned. And if you want more information about where we got the information for that, we copy pasted the law into the website, since trying to find it online is kind of a hassle. So we just copied it in here. Here's the minimum requirements for your conflict of interest policy and the minimum requirements for the whistleblower policy. I do want to mention that the whistleblower policy is technically by the state required if you have a certain amount of employees or a certain budget size, but the county requires it of all applicants, since it is a best practice to have that. Here's also the cash flow forecast. Give me a second to open this up. And this is the one we got from the Nonprofit Finance Fund. You can edit this however you want to make sense. Just make sure you meet those items that we listed on the attachment, like what we want to see. So you can change all of these names, display, whatever. You can change it to be more simple, or you can just fill it in and submit that as a PDF. There's also some definitions on here that may help you. And the applicant briefing will be saved here along this line as soon as I get the recording. So it might be a day or two. Okay. So I covered all of that. Let's go into the actual application. All right, so this is what it looks like. We have all these buttons, and now there's 23 screens total. But you may not have to do all 23 screens. It might jump you from 7 to 9, depending on how you answer, according to what's right for your organization. The website will save as you go along, but I do recommend hitting save draft at the bottom, all the way down here. There's the next button. There will be like a last and then next. And for the last page, there will be an option for preview and an option to submit. I recommend hitting preview first. Make sure you look through, make sure everything's good. Go back if you need to, and then submit at the end. So the blue circle is the one you're on. Gray circles you haven't covered yet. And then black circles will be the ones you've filled out. However, if you're like on page 10 and you want to go back to page 6, you can do so. But it won't let you jump back to page 10. You'll have to go one by one. However, you won't lose the information on these pages. It just doesn't let you skip all the way over because of that if-then question logic. Okay, and if you want a copy of your application, you'll have to print or save as PDF from the preview page. So I am going to pretend to be an organization, and obviously this is not going to be very accurate. About this particular one, this social media address, it's going to want this whole stuff in there. I usually just copy paste it directly from a URL. I'm going to say that my address is my work address. This is all obviously simple stuff. Fortunately, you don't have to type it all in. If you have it on your computer, it'll save it. I'm going to say it's me. Yeah, it's got all my info already in there. That's my work phone if you need it. If you don't have an executive director or a CEO or a manager, it won't let you advance if you don't fill in certain portions. Let me hit next, and it'll show you which ones are required. So if you don't have a CEO, for example, or an ED, just put an NA on the ones that are required. If you do have an executive director, please put in that info. Then we're going to go, oops, and this is, put in this info. Most of the questions you can move to the next page without entering the information. We just want to make sure we have your contact info. And it's also extra important that you check your the preview so that you don't accidentally forget to enter that info as you're going along. At the bottom of the page, the first page, there's this line where it asks if you want to receive your contract just by email or by mail. So if you turn it on, you want it just by email. And now let me move on to the funding info. So being I'm going to say I asked for 100, or I got 100,000. And ignore my math, it's really bad. I guess let's say my budget went down. I don't know. Obviously put in your actual info, but I just want to get through these screens with you so you can see what it looks like. And say I'm asking for the same again. Here, you select your actual level, and that's what changes pretty much the rest of the application. And then it gets into the full-on questions. For now, I'm going to save this draft, and then I'm going to log out and show you if I want to go back in. I just hit log in, put in my info. Go back to application, 2022 funding, and it brings me right back to wherever I was. If I want to go back, I can do so. See, I can't jump back to 3 because if I change this information, then maybe the next page would change. But in this case, I just go back in. We went over, please let us know what you plan to use the funds for. Limit your response to 500 words. Usually if it says this, it has a maximum limit. Anything that doesn't have something like this at the bottom just means that we expect a relatively short answer. It shouldn't be like paragraphs and paragraphs. Obviously, your organization's mission statement. How does your organization measure impact and success? I believe this is a new question. We had kind of asked for some of this information throughout, but this time we made it a more pointed question. And we have this new question for the pandemic effects on your organization. And for any of these, if you have more that doesn't fit in these spaces, feel free to submit it as an additional attachment on the last page before the preview. We're just asking for all your basic financial information, whether you have a surplus or deficit, and the amount. If you do have one, especially if you have a deficit, please let us know what you are doing about it. If you have an endowment, let's say you do, it opens up all these additional questions. I'm just going to leave it as no for now. And it's the same questions that are on the paper version that we used last year. Same with whether you have a capital or endowment campaign underway, start and end dates, campaign goals, pledges committed to date, and whether you're planning for a campaign, and what is the purpose of the funds requested. And I can change that back. So here this is what we mean by integrated uploads. It kind of asks you about all your financials, and then we go into actual uploading of our files. In this case, the financial worksheet is B. We did write it in case you needed that. It does list the limits and the type of files. They should all be PDFs. Oh, I'm sorry. That was the annual report. Whatever you submit to New York State is fine with us. We assume that if you're asking for over $250 or for over $50,000, that you're somewhere in here, because then it would be more than 20% of your budget, in which case you would have to submit a level 3. So that's why we think that for the size of your organization, you're probably having a report with CPA review. But whatever the state requires of you, that's what you can submit to us. And basically, I can upload all my attachments. There we go. So I do recommend kind of getting all your attachments together and then going through the application, but really you can do it either way, because you can always go back and add it on before submitting. So Graham talked about this date of last review, basically the last time the organization checked that the document is good for the organization, that the organization hasn't changed or laws haven't changed that makes it not a good fit anymore. And by date of most recent date of adoption, we mean when it was actually, when the board actually had to vote and say something changed and this is our new and correct bylaws. The rest of these, which we started last year or the year before, we just want to know where in your bylaws is this information talked about, explained, listed, etc. These are all either best practices or requirements according to nonprofit corporation law. So we do think you're supposed to have all of these in your bylaws somewhere. And if you don't have it, please let us know why not. For example, maybe your organization does not require an audit committee. That is a reason why maybe you wouldn't have that in your bylaws. Just make sure to note the pages or location in your bylaws, and anything that's missing, let us know why. And same process for the conflict of interest policy and the whistleblower policy. And again, these were taken from those minimum requirements off of here. It's almost an exact copy paste. And then we ask you for your documents. Copy of your bylaws, copy of your conflict of interest policy with your disclosure forms signed. We don't need full copies of all the disclosure forms, but we do want at least a signature page for all your board members and key staff. And then we are on the board of directors info. This is the same information we've asked before. Number of conflict of interest disclosure forms collected, number of independent directors, board meetings, and board meetings with quorum. Last year, I think we started asking for the demographics of your board. Now we know that sex and gender and ethnicity and race are not the same thing. So we don't expect that if you have 15 members that this will necessarily add up to 15. If you have someone that is both identifies as both male and female or female and gender nonconforming, whatever it may be, we understand that it's not necessarily going to add up to the same number of board members, but please just let us know using whole numbers, not percentages or portions of numbers, not fractions, whether this characteristic is represented on your board. For example, if I was on someone's board, they would have me under American Indian, Black, Hispanic, and white. So it wouldn't add up to one person for just me. So we're not concerned about the total number, just the representation on the board. We've always, well, as long as I've been involved in this, we've asked for your committees of the board and your committees of the corporation. So if you're marketing and you want to add another one, just hit the add button. You can reorder these if you want to, but it's not important. And I can add as many rows as I may need if you want to add a bunch all at once. If you need a definition or try to get committees of the board and committees of the corporation kind of separate in your mind, go back to resources, and we have it here. So we have a presentation, some information, and the limitations of the executive committee and stuff like that. Okay. Next page. We asked about your staff and volunteers info. So please use whole numbers as to the number of paid staff and the number of unpaid volunteers. Or unpaid staff, however you want to call it. And then your paid staff demographics split by leadership and non-leadership positions. Again, we don't necessarily know what we don't need to. If you said that your current FY to date is 10, we don't necessarily expect these to add up to 10. And if they don't fit any of the, if they don't feel that any of these represents them, just use none of the above. This question we added last year. Erie County is committed to diversity and inclusion. Let us know how your organization demonstrates these. And we added this question this year. Please provide your organization's diversity, equity, and inclusion statement if you have one. And information on your strategic plan. I think we added a little bit to this one. Date of adoption, last review, same concept as with the bylaws. Dates covered by the plan. This can be the years, for example, if it's from 2020 to 2025 or whatever. Doesn't have to be to the day. And then your attachment I. Next. A summary of your organization's services and programs that is new. We just want to get an idea, an overall idea of what the organization does. And these questions we added last year: racial justice, economic justice, and environmental justice, and how the organization supports that. We know that these are really big systemic issues, and no one organization might be able to do all of it. We don't expect all organizations to do all of it, but please let us know how your organization does support it. And we wrote the definitions of those right in there. Next page. Population served. If you have the demographic info, please provide that. And if you and please let us know the source of those numbers, whether it's tickets. I don't know. There's so many ways you all serve the population. Please let us know just where the numbers came from, and note the differences with pre-pandemic conditions. And this question was on the application last year. Describe the audience and communities, how you are working to expand your constituency, and efforts to reach underserved audiences. And then that's the last page. I think we jumped from like 19 to 21. Yep. So again, you can just, if there's a couple details, especially any big changes or any anything, especially if it's not related to the pandemic, please let us know what happened. If 250 words is not enough for whatever you need to tell us, please feel free to do attachment Z. It can be whatever you need it to be. It can be multiple documents. Just make sure you save them all as one file as a PDF. Again, I recommend like smallpdf.com to do something like that and just upload it here. And here we have the option to preview. So I wouldn't hit submit unless you're absolutely sure you've already checked everything. So we go to preview, and here it shows me all my responses. However, if I didn't answer something, see, there's a bunch of stuff under fiscal health that's not in there. So if you didn't answer something, it won't show you that it's not filled out. You'll just have to go back to the screen. Maybe it was 2 or 4. I don't recall exactly. But again, although I went all the way back here at these, it won't let me jump to it. I can just hit next, and whatever info I had will already be in there. It does mean I have to hit next to get all the way back to the end, though. But it's a good opportunity to go through and make sure you've answered everything. Bear with me here. I shouldn't have to jump quite so far back. And so here we are back at the preview. And supposing you actually put in all your info, submit. And that's it. Then you will get an email saying that we received your submission. I will get an email saying that your submission is in, and we'll take it from there. Does anyone have any questions? I can jump back and forth as needed. Hopefully I didn't go too fast.
It was great, Mary Ellie. Definitely not too fast, although I guess I'm somewhat more familiar.
I think this is a more experienced group. They've seen it all
right.
before.
Yeah, exactly. Any questions at all?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
Well, again, if for some reason you do have a question after the fact or after you're sort of taking a look or setting up your application on the county's website, by all means, please email Mary Ellie. And if it's a question that's outside of her, she can definitely forward it to whoever can appropriately respond to it.
Yep, so here we have, sorry. Here we have my contact info, my work number. I'm only in the office on Tuesdays, but do leave a message that does get to my email, and then I can reply to you by email, or you can email me directly. And all the info is at erie.gov/cultural. Yeah, I'll stay on till 7. If anyone has any questions at all, I'll just hang out. But if you're all set, I think we're pretty much all wrapped up.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us. Again, if you have any questions, by all means, please stay around and put them into the chat. And again, if you realize after you hang up or you get off this that you have a question, by all means, like I said, email Mary Ellie and she will have it either respond herself or have somebody respond appropriately. And thank you. Looking forward to receiving your applications.
Thanks, Graham. Thanks, Mary Ellie. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
The recording of this, Mary Ellie, maybe we should let people know when and where it'll be available.
Yep. So it's taken all day to actually get yesterday's on.
Okay.
So I would say a day or two. It'll
Okay.
be available on the resources page. I'll switch the page over to. So on erie.gov/cultural/resources, just keep scrolling down. All the briefings and trainings will have it right here. So yeah, I'm waiting for this recording to be available. It'll actually be on YouTube and then linked from here, but you can check it out on the Erie County YouTube directly. And I'll set it up for today's right under here as well.
Great. I believe there's a question, but I cannot seem to be able to pull it up myself.
Where do you see it, Graham?
Well, it shows one in chat, so on the chat thing. So I wasn't sure, but when I click on it, there's no actual question there. So, but I was having that same issue yesterday, so maybe.
Okay, I think I've gotten all of them. People were commenting. Everything's been very clear, which is very nice, and that they're sure there'll be plenty of questions once they actually start filling out the application, which, of course, it's always the case.
True.
Feel the same way with everything.
Yep.
I'm surprised we were able to do both briefings in an hour. I was very pessimistic, saving 2 hours for it.
Yeah, well, and I'm again, the technology doesn't really lend itself, because I feel that there's a lot of questions when we have in-person ones, so I think the technology doesn't really lend itself to it. But I think some of it is that the just historically that we filled it a lot more questions when it was an in-person. I mean, it makes sense, But again, I want to make sure that everybody, and obviously, if you're anyone who's listening, any questions that you do have are definitely answered prior to the due date of the application itself. So rather you ask the question than get it wrong when you're submitting.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So,
it's 7 p.m. I'm gonna stop the recording.
thank you very much for everybody.